guys, welcome to our next Q&A. We're really excited about it. We've got some great people who are sitting on the panel this evening, and we're going to be talking about a really important subject. We're going to be talking about how do we parent in lockdown. I'm sure that many of the people who are listening to this stream are in a situation where they are parenting currently, and they've got small children or older children at home whilst they're trying to continue with their daily lives. And I think it's a really good opportunity for us to come together and to have a discussion really about how we can do well at parenting in lockdown. I just want to say before we start, I'm going to introduce in a moment our panelists for this evening. But before I start, I just want to make a disclaimer, which is that we are not experts. I do not consider myself to be a parenting expert, but I am a person who has had some fails. And I've also been a person who's had some wins, and I'm sure everybody else on the panel is exactly the same. But we want this to be a real and honest conversation about some of the challenges that we face and some of the ways that we found to navigate what can be quite a difficult and tricky time. If you do have any questions, then you can pop those in the comments below. We'll make sure that we are reviewing those during this session so that we can provide an answer to any questions that you've got. We'd love to hear from you. We have had some questions already that have come through, and we do have some things that we'd like to talk about ourselves. But really the purpose of this is for us to interact with you. So if you've got something, a burning question, then please let us know. We would absolutely love to hear it. So without much further ado, I'm going to introduce today's panelists. I'm going to start with the Bells. I'm just wondering if you could just tell us your names, a little bit about your family makeup and your current situation.
Hi, it's Dean and Emma. We have 13 children. 4 have left home and 9 are still with us. Em's full-time at home, I work part-time, and yeah, that's us.
That's great, thank you very much. Mrs. Brett?
Hi, my name's Wendy. I've got 3 children who are between 11, 14 and 18 next week, and I don't have paid employment at the moment. So I'm full-time at home, and my husband is still working full-time from home.
Great, thank you very much. The Junior Bells?
Hello, we're John and Rebecca. One's John, I'm Rebecca. We have 2 little boys, a 1-year-old and a 2-year-old. I'm a full-time stay-at-home mum, and you're still going out to work, aren't you?
Yeah.
That's great, thank you very much. What about you, Claire?
Hello, I'm Claire. I have 3 children aged between 30 this year and 23 this year. I know, I get it all the time. Don't look old enough, it's fine. I'm a full-time teacher. I'm in management in education, and I am currently shielding because of medical conditions, but working from home. So I'm not going out at all, but I am working from home. And I have 1 child, the 22-year-old, that still lives with me.
That's really helpful. Thanks, Claire. Tom and Amy?
Hi, I'm Naomi, this is Tom. We've got 2 little boys, one that's being homeschooled at the minute, it's 5, and the other that's 3. And Tom is still currently working, and I'm furloughed, so I get a nice little bit of time with my boys.
That's really nice. That's great. Well, thank you very much, guys, and thanks for being involved this evening. So the first question that section of that I really wanted to sort of discuss is we've had a number of questions around how do we manage our own mental health and the mental health of our children at this time. And you know, it's a really tricky time, and I think it's something that's really important. So the first question is really, how do we as parents manage our mental health during lockdown whilst we are trying to parent? Does anybody want to jump into that one? Rebecca?
I'll go first. I guess this is something I'm quite interested in, kind of learning a bit more about mental health and self-care and that sort of thing. And I know we've had times since being in lockdown where we've both come at the end of the day and just found we've just had a really tough day or a tough few days. And it's noticing the times where you're struggling most, trying to figure out what the pressure pointers are, and what you need to put in place to essentially make sure it isn't in a spiral downwards. I know for myself, I was finding it quite a challenge with 2 little boys at home. I was not getting any time to myself. There was no quiet time if they were both missing naps or anything. And I had to be really intentional about getting up an hour earlier than I normally would, just so I could have time to myself, quiet time, a bit of silence, and a nice hot coffee at the start of the day before I started kind of delving into the day. And I've found since I've put that into place, things have felt a lot easier. I've just had that space to breathe at the start of the day, which means that by the time John comes home at the end, it's not quite as tough going because I've had a good start. Don't know if anyone else wants to add anything in. That's just a little something for me.
Yeah, do you want to go, Claire?
I was just going to say that I think that my mental health suffers when there's a gap between my expectation of what I should be achieving and what I am actually achieving. Yes. And the larger that gap, the worse I feel. Because at the moment I am limited in how much I can achieve, I've had to adjust my expectations, and fortunately I've had a boss and staff team that also understand that, and so sometimes you can't actually control what's going around you, but you can always control your own expectations of how good you should be doing this. That's
really helpful. Tom?
Yeah, I was just going to say, I think for me, it's I think teamwork's quite a big thing between the parents as well. I suppose because I'm not going out to work, I am upstairs working, and there has been times where I've kind of thought maybe I just need to peel away for 5 minutes just to come down and give a bit of support if you can hear that maybe Naomi just needs a break for a bit of time or something like that. And I think it's just really key to be honest with each other as well. And my work is very busy at the minute, but I've probably not done that as much as I'd like to, but I think it's just trying to do that where you can, and just being honest with each other and kind of letting each other know if you do need that help. So like on weekends, for example, I've tried to take on a bit more stuff over the weekends because it gives Naomi a bit more of a break. So it's just just being honest with each other, I think, and working together is key.
That's really good. I think for me, one of the things that I find is I need a bit of time on my own just to process what's happened in the day. So for me, it's normally at the end of the day. It's a bit easier for me because I don't have small children running around, and so I can tend to give my children boundaries and say, you know, actually I just need 5 minutes to myself. But the thing that I find is the most amazing is the lock on the bathroom door. I don't know about anybody else, but once you've locked that door, there's no one getting in. And so it's just taking that few minutes just to kind of have a bath or just sit and reflect and just take a moment to myself. I find that really helpful. That's really good. So the second part of that question then, I suppose, is how do we manage our children's mental health? Because actually this is quite a challenging time for them as well. Is there anybody who would like to respond on that one?
Yeah, we keep laughter sort of uppermost. I think it's really important to keep the news that's coming into the house sort of at a minimum around the kids, because they pick up a lot, and obviously they pick up on stresses and fears that we might be carrying as well. So I found very much that we keep the vibe of the home positive. We keep we live, you know, very much in the day instead of, you know, we can't really make plans at the minute anyway. But we find that there's a lot of times when we just need to kind of stop and just be silly, just laugh, you know, make up funny stories, or, you know, some of the family things that we share between us. We had a hilarious one from John and Rebecca tonight of Solomon, and just keep a lot of laughter and light in the home, because it can get a bit heavy, I think, what we're all dealing with.
No, that's really good. I suppose, but on the back of that, I'll come to you in a second, Claire, but on the back of that, I suppose one of the other questions that we were asked was about whether or not how we explain to children what's going on at the moment, and actually whether we do in a detailed level. I just wondered if anybody had any thoughts on that. Go on, Tom.
We were quite with Elijah's school. I think they were quite good actually prior to lockdown happening. That they were fairly open with things to an extent. And I didn't actually realise this, but he let me know that they have like a news bulletin during school where they kind of break and have like a 5-10 minute bite size. Here's what's going on in the news, and that was something that their school had kind of given them. Now he calls it the nasty book. That's kind of his way of calling it. And we've not gone any further than that, because I think to him, that's probably an easy way of him understanding what it is. And it's, but yeah, so the school were great. And we've just kind of carried on with that and just kind of limiting the exposure to it, I suppose, to a certain level, because I'm amazed at how much they do. As a fairly newish parent, I'm still fairly amazed at how much they do take in.
Yeah, just like little adverts that I've seen flash up on TV, he kind of gravitates to that. The NHS advert that's been coming up quite a lot, he suddenly looks a little bit concerned. So just explaining that that's what that nasty bug is kind of doing to people, and that's why we need to try and stay safe at home.
That's really good. That's a really good point. Claire, did you want to come in on this one?
It was more to do with the mental health of children, actually. So I just, as Emma was talking, as I said, I don't have small children at home anymore, which I honestly thank God for every single day. I do not know how I would have done this if it had happened in a time when I had 3 teenagers in the house. My mental health would not have survived it. I really don't think. But I think we need to make room for the children that we have that we know do have an issue with mental health. So my youngest, over the time that we've been in lockdown, was first of all furloughed and then sacked, so lost his job. And so with that and the anxiety of having to go out and do the shopping for me, because I'm not allowed in the supermarkets or anywhere. I literally just drive and he goes in and does the shopping. And I know he's quite anxious about gloves and the bacterial stuff and washing his hands and stuff. And I know that those things are affecting his levels of anxiety. So it's just being aware, really, and allowing them the time. So yesterday, he probably won't thank me for sharing this, but yesterday he wasn't in a great mood. And so I just stepped away. I mean, he's 22, he's an adult, so I can do that. But it's just being aware of which of your children need that space and which of them need encouraging to just cheer up, and which might need a run round the garden, and how and being able to facilitate that, really, I think.
Yeah, no, I think that's really good. Wendy, is there something you wanted to bring?
Yeah, I just think it's important that we recognise, it's a little bit what Claire was saying there, actually, that children need space sometimes too, you know, and even if however we are dealing with this in our homes, however, whatever kind of, if we're creating a structure or any, organising our days in a certain way, it's more important to recognise that sometimes the children might just need some space, might just need some time out on their own, might need to, depending on their age, go out the house or go to their room for a while, and just allowing them to do that if that's what they need, and and recognising it, and not. It's very easy because children don't always express themselves in the way that adults do, so they might not even realise that that's what they need, and so it's sort of being aware that they might need that, and allowing it to happen, even if it cuts across what you've organised. And then the other thing that I think is helpful for everybody's mental health is just organising some special moments that you wouldn't perhaps normally do. So just create some, just something that mixes it up a bit, really. So one example that we did was we decided to get my granddad's silver cutlery out and lay out do a 5-course meal and teach them all how to start from the outside and work in, and which glasses to use. Mind you, I had to Google it first. But just doing that, and everyone got dressed up and we came and all sat down to dinner together, and it just created something in the home. It was quite easy to do. It wasn't a posh dinner, but it taught them a skill for the future, hopefully, if they're ever in that situation, and it was something you can enjoy. So I think just putting those moments in as well that just provide a bit of mental relief, in keeping with what Emma was saying about keeping the humour going.
That's really good, thanks. Emma, did you want to come in on that?
Yes, I did, and I've forgotten what I was going to say, so we'll pass.
Don't worry, I'll carry on and then we can come back to you. I think that's a really good point that you made, Wendy, with some of the ideas that you that idea that you had. I think that is something that's really important, and it doesn't have to be expensive. Like you said, it's using what's in your hands. I heard of someone going on holiday for the weekend. They went away for the weekend, and obviously you can't travel at the moment, but they actually packed up all their stuff and they went camping in the back garden. So they set up their camp in the back garden. They had a campfire, they did s'mores, and they just took an opportunity to do something they wouldn't ordinarily do. I've also seen some great things on social media of people turning trampolines into dens which people have slept in, and all manner of things. So I think that is one way in which we can just create these special moments. Great. Tom and Naomi, did you want to come in on that?
All I was going to say was I found great importance in making sure, especially with younger kids, same with any kind of age group, but just making sure that you're getting out in the day. Even if you don't have a big garden or not a lot of space outside, to try and go for a walk. Or our thing has been going on our scooters. Well, not mine, but the boys have been going on their scooters every day, just to try and burn a little bit of energy. And then that's good for them. It's releasing endorphins and
making them happy.
Mental health.
Yep.
Yeah, no, that's really good. Yes, Emma.
No, it's on a sort of a more serious note with it. I think the biggest single influence that on our children is what's going on inside of us, because kind of we're the filter really that they see other things through. And so if we have got issues regarding the virus or whatever, if we're carrying a lot of anxiety or fear ourselves, it will tell in the atmosphere of the home, but also the children pick up on that. And one of the best helps that we can be to our children is to give them a lens to see the world that is a confident one, and that brings it back to faith and God, and not being scared of everything. And so I think not even so much in the conversations but I mean, we do talk to our kids about what's going on, obviously depending on their age and what they can cope with. But I think it's when they see that we're upbeat and we're confident and that God's got this and he's looking after us, and they kind of like, oh, that's all right then. And so we all still care about what's going on out there, but it's teaching children gradually to sort of be concerned in a caring way about what's going on in the world, but also knowing that they're safe, and it gives them confidence.
That's really good. And we had a question that came in from one of the viewers, which was, how do we explain to children that God will help us through this pandemic? Which kind of links in with that point. I wondered if anybody had any ideas or suggestions about how they've done that and how that's worked. Wendy?
Our children are a little bit, sorry, our children are a little bit too young to really have any clue what's going on, other than the fact that they're not seeing the normal family members. But I just want to encourage you not to underestimate how much children will receive. If you just tell them that God will carry them through it, then more often than not, especially the younger ones, they will trust you at your word. If you live out what you're saying, if you live out the fact that you trust what God's said that he'll bring you through, then the children, again, as Emma was saying, will pick up on that and trust you at your word. But also, I guess, just relate it back to Bible stories. You can do it in any way that you know your child will kind of relate to and receive, whether it's a YouTube clip of a particular Bible passage, or I don't know, I guess for our children it'd be putting on a puppet show or something something like that, just to get the message across and start kind of, I guess for us it's sowing the seeds early, knowing that God's always there, he'll always provide and bring you through.
And I think on that, there's every season comes with opportunities, and this is an opportunity, difficult in so many ways, but also unique in what we can teach our children. And within the church and the sort of Christian sphere, there's so much going on prophetically at the moment, where God is speaking to the church nationally, but also internationally, about what he is, how he feels about his children, and how he wants to protect and what he's going to do through this. And actually, this is also an opportunity to teach our kids how to listen to God and how to ask him what he says, because it's important that we like Emma said, we are the filter for our kids, but also it's also an opportunity for us to then show them how to hear God for themselves. So we can sit them down and say, well, I can tell you what I know, what God has said to me, but this is also an opportunity for you to ask God, and what do you think God would say about this? And get them learning those sorts of skills and giftings early on in their life. And we've already seen in Life Church, there have been kids, some of the parents here who've got children, whose kids have prophesied to church leaders and have like impacted them deeply. And so there is no age limit on what age God can use a child to sort of impact and touch our lives, when he can speak to them. So yeah, I'd encourage as well, talk to them and encourage them in how to hear God for themselves, and in this season as well. Obviously, everyone's going to be at a different level, but that would be what I would encourage.
That's really, really good.
I think just on the back of that, just definitely about the Bible stories. That's something that I probably hold hands up and say we probably didn't follow that through enough at story time for a period. We were doing it loads, and then there was probably a period of time where things got busy, where it was probably if we were trying to get the children to bed or something like that. So that's what I've taken. Kind of, we've done that now purposely, is that we've got the time now to do that with them. So it's making sure we read, even if it's just 1 or 2 pages, it's just getting that input in them every single night. And what we've been able to do more recently that we've not always had the opportunity for is to have food, like eat together as well, a lot more. And we found that Zach has actually started to pray now, so he's the one who wants to pray, where he's never really kind of asked to do that. It's a very short, simple little prayer that he says, but he loves it now. He wants us all to hold hands and pray before we do it, and it's just getting that input. And now it's been the time, because we've been able to do more special things and encourage them on that. And we've had there's been a couple of occasions where they've both prayed for things that have then happened, where I've kind of like probably shown as much shock as them at the time when we've done things that they prayed for each other or something, and there's been something they found that they thought they lost or things like that, and it's just been great to kind of put that into them, but then remind them after that's happened in terms of why that was the case and what God can do, and link it back to the situation we're in now. And I think it's had a real impact on them and seen them grow in those areas, definitely.
And we've also got a really just like a really simple devotional. I've actually shared it on our life group a couple of times, that we've tried to do in the mornings whenever we've been able to. And actually, it's probably impacted me maybe more than the kids, but that's also been something that's been really good that we've been able to do together.
No, that's really, really good. And I know I've seen that a lot of parents have been sharing a lot of the Psalms and some memory verses with their kids. It was a real pleasure this last week to see Alice McMaster, one of our life kids, is able to recite the whole of Psalm 91 off by heart, and I couldn't even do that as it stands. I've set myself the challenge now to learn it, but I just think, you know, that's amazing. And those things, those skills that they learn to have the verses of scripture in their minds that they can just recall in these moments of trouble, I think is a really good opportunity. So well done, Alice McMaster, good job. So that's really good. That's great. So just one final kind of question in this section is sort of related to us as parents, really. And the question was, how do we avoid comparison? It's very easy at the moment because we are living our lives, our social lives on social media, to see the best that everybody is producing in their social media profiles. How do we avoid comparison at this time? Go on, Wendy.
Just don't do it. Just at any time, don't compare yourself with others, because no two people are the same. We're all unique and we all do things differently. Our children are all unique, they all do things differently, and you just can't compare yourself against other people, because it's not a like for like comparison. You know, look at what other people are doing by all means and take the good bits that you think might help, but never look at other people and think, oh, I wish we were like that, or their kids are like this and mine are like that, because you only see part of the picture. You never see the full picture of what's going on in other people's lives. So it's not even worth going there.
Yeah, that's great. Thought Naomi was going to come in then. I think that's true. I think with comparison, it can be a really tricky situation. Rebecca, did you want to bring something in on that one?
Yeah, I was going to just add on to that. I think part of it is knowing how you function as a parent and, well, as a person as well. So do you thrive in structure and kind of a really strong routine in your daily life, or do you thrive more if you're more of a go with the flow kind of person? I know for me, on my really tired days, I need a structure in order to actually get anything done. But then the other times, I don't like having a structure there because I find it quite restrictive, and I like to just come up with games on the spot. And I think if you're constantly comparing yourself to other parents who maybe kind of function in a different way, you're going to find that challenge. Whereas if you're aware of how you work, how you function, then it can become a lot easier to know what your limits are, and you just become a lot easier on yourself. So on the days where I'm not doing a really routine day, the boys maybe have a nap an hour after they normally would, I'm not going to be hard on myself, because that's just how I work, that's how I parent. And some parents can't function knowing that their children are going to go to bed an hour later at night, but for me that's fine, it's okay. And it releases a bit of the pressure, I think, if you know how you work and you know that not everyone is the same, and you don't always have to be someone else in order to have a good day.
Yeah.
No, I think that's really good. It reminded me, oh, go on, Tom or Amy, were you going to come in?
I was just going to say the thing that I've found, and just being open from my point of view, that I've compared to is probably other dads who are probably furloughed or off at the minute. And I think I've found that's sometimes things I've looked at during the day where people are out with their kids and have a lot of time now with them, when I'm still working and kind of sometimes don't get outside all day because I've just got so much on at the minute. And it kind of, that's something I need to work on myself, to not look and think, I wish, because I would love to have that time with them. That's why I try and make the most of the weekends. But I think that's just something for me to work on, is just making kind of, some people might prefer to be working to have a full salary. So I'm fortunate in that position to be doing what I'm doing. So, but it's just, that's just thing for me, just being open and honest, that is a challenge. So to work on that in terms of just trying to realise that I'm fortunate in other ways as well, that people might look at me in a different way.
And just being cautious on how much you're on Facebook or Instagram, and like Wendy said, taking from it what would work for you. I've got a friend who does these amazing elaborate days for her children. She pulls out all the old party stuff that she's done for their previous parties and does these amazing days for them. And I have to be really careful that I don't get into that, oh, I'm not doing that for my kids, and are they missing out on not getting that? And actually that's what she's really good at. She's really good at being creative, and she's kept all that stuff, so she hasn't actually gone out of her way to do all that stuff. It's just stuff that she's brought back out, and it's making sure that you're being true to yourself and not, I mean, that's what works for her, but it probably wouldn't work for me at all. But yeah.
Yeah, I think that's really good. And it's something that I don't struggle with now, but I did struggle with when I was much younger, was, you know, looking at how other people did things and thinking that I had to be a certain way. But it reminded me, I recently have basically graffitied all the mirrors in our house with chalk paint. And I've put Bible scriptures and like little reminders on mirrors to encourage people when they get up. And the one that I put on our bathroom mirror, because I just felt it was really relevant at the time to James and I, is actually, it's from Romans 12 verse 6, but I took it out of the Message translation. And it says this, it says, let's just go ahead and be what we were made to be, without enviously or pridefully comparing ourselves with each other or trying to be something we aren't. And I thought, isn't that amazing? Because ultimately God has made us as individuals, and so we can't try and be like somebody else. It's okay to kind of glean different skills and different ideas from people, but we're never going to be exactly the same as somebody else. And if we're constantly striving to be like someone else, we're going to miss out on being who God has created us to be. So I think that's a really good encouragement. Just popping back a bit to a previous question that we had, which was the question around explaining to children about that God will help us through this pandemic. We've had another question come in on the live stream, and the question was, what if parents won't discuss religion, but their grandmother has a faith and wants to be able to influence her grandchildren and bring them hope and encouragement at this time? It's obviously quite a tricky situation. I just wondered whether anybody had any wisdom on that one. Go on then, Claire.
I can't claim to have any wisdom on it, but we do have similar situations at school when we've got children who have expressed a real interest in Christianity and have found hope in some of the things that the Christian teachers have said, but their parents are not supportive. And the angle that we always take is that until they're 18, they must obey their parents. And throughout their whole life they must honor their parents. So so I think asking the parents' permission and talking about, you can have whatever conversations you want to have. Nobody can tell you what conversations you can have with children, I don't think, but taking them to church, or I think that needs a discussion with the parents. And I think the parents are the ones that, as they're younger, I think they need to be involved in decisions like that. Does that make sense? And yeah,
I get what you're saying. Were you going to come in, Rebecca?
Yeah, I was just going to say, don't ever underestimate the power of prayer in this situation, because sometimes that's the one thing that we can fall back on. Well, it should be our first thing and our last thing is prayer. But you can always be praying for your family members, even if you can't see them and speak to them in the way that you want to at the moment. But also in the times when you may be able to speak to them over video call or the phone calls, just be aware of the message you're carrying. Are you speaking hope and confidence and faith in this time? Because the children will pick up on that. They'll pick up on kind of the words that you use, and or the feeling behind it, more than they will necessarily what you're saying. They'll notice if you're peaceful where everyone else around them is maybe not so peaceful. So just kind of be focused on the words that you're using and the message that you're bringing in the atmosphere that you can bring in the conversations you have with them.
Yeah, that's a really good suggestion. I think as well, I have found some really helpful resources over the years of things, books and songs and DVDs and films and things that are not overtly Christian, but they carry a really strong faith message. And some of those books are really good. I think there was one that was written by the guy who wrote the Christian song Good Father. That was a really good book. I'll try and remember the name of it and I'll put it in the notes. Naomi's got it. Do you know what it's called, Naomi?
Good Father.
It's called Good Father.
I could go get it if you want me to.
It's Pat someone, isn't it, that wrote it?
Chris Tomlin. Is it linked to Chris Tomlin?
It's Chris Tomlin and Pat Barrett, I think.
There we are. But that, that's a really good hope-filled book that you could just give your grandkids, and it would just bring them a bit of hope. So that's really good. Awesome. Okay. So the next section of questions that we had sort of related to this term homeschooling that we're using at the moment, or some people might just say it's kind of supervising homework. So the first question is, should we be homeschooling or should we be supervising homework? Which is it? And I think, Claire, you had some thoughts on this.
Yes, so I've spoken to quite a lot of parents. Obviously, I'm setting work online for students, and there are some students that aren't engaging, and I have made a lot of phone calls to parents. And there are some who are, thank goodness you have called, you need to speak to my child, I can't get them to do any work. And others have said, well, we're helping, but there's not a lot we can do. And then I've also had those that have really had serious mental health issues because they can't read and they can't write, and they therefore can't help their child with their homework. And now the teacher calling is making this even worse, and they get quite stressed and anxious on the telephone. And my thoughts are this: your child. Now, I don't think I'd have been able to get 3 teenagers to work to do schoolwork all day if they were in. And I'm a teacher. I struggled enough getting them to do my own homework. I taught all 3 of them, and it was my homework that they didn't do, and because they knew I just wasn't going to give them the homework detention, or they thought I wasn't. Yeah, so I would say your children, and I think if you're a child of a year 10 or a year 12 student, then they do need to be doing some work, because this time next year, no one's going to cancel their GCSEs and their A levels. They are the ones that actually are going to miss out the most if they don't do some work now. But what work they do will vary probably, and it's about relationship. They work with their teacher out of relationship, and so you need to be able to have that relationship with them and talk about what they would like to do and what work they could do. But if they're not year 10 and they're not year 12, then honestly, when they come back to school, we will catch them up. It really isn't a massive deal. And no one through our school is getting any form of punishment or detention or any of that. I mean, most of them want to work because they're bored stiff. But there are those that don't and won't engage. And the most you can do is call and speak to them and encourage them. And if they still won't, then they'll catch up when they get back, because that's what we do. That's our job.
That's really helpful. I think I started out with very naively at the beginning of my homeschooling journey. So on the Friday of lockdown, well, we knew it was coming. And so I went out the weekend and I bought nice boxes and just cheap ones, but little pencil pots and some new stationery. And we have this metal heart-shaped magnet that hangs on the wall. And I used my chalk pens, which I love, to put, you know, breakfast at 9. Then we're going to sit down at 9:30. We're going to do this. We're going to break at 11 for a snack, and we're going to have lunch at 12. And I was so excited about it. We're all going to sit at the table. I was going to work from home. My kids were going to be studying, and it was going to be awesome. It's going to be this great experience. Anyway, number one, the kids didn't get out of bed on time, and I had to fight them out of bed. And then number two, they had no intention of sitting down at my regimented timetable. Now, thankfully, after some negotiation, we did manage to come up with a solution that we were all happy with, which meant getting up slightly later, finishing slightly later, and flexing how we did that. I know we've got a couple of people on the call who actually are experienced homeschoolers. So I just wonder whether you had any insight or wisdom about how you've been navigating this situation. Wendy?
Yeah, well, partly it depends on the school. All three of my children are at 3 different schools. I think how the school has responded to this, it to some degree affects how you respond as a parent. So, my youngest, he's going to be finishing primary school this year, and the school very, very quickly got an online sort of platform going where they could put things on. If anything, there was a lot of stuff coming, because obviously the full array of parents, primary school age, thinking, I've got to teach my children, you know, I've got to do everything for my child. And fortunately, because I have homeschooled when mine were young, I know that it's not really that much pressure. It doesn't really matter. And they can learn just by going in the garden and digging up worms. You know, it's not a big issue if they're sat doing structured learning. But a lot of parents have never really had to think outside of the box, and the children have gone into the system at a young age, and they've come through the system, and the parents have perhaps never even thought about anything other than that. So having to suddenly be faced with it, it's been really challenging and difficult for them. So that was really good with him, because there was stuff being set. And out of the 3 children, he's the one who is less inclined to do work and be self-motivated. And that's been a bit of a challenge, and maybe tell you more about that later. But the other 2, again, completely different places and different schools and different school responses. So one of the schools, again, set up a little bit slower than the primary school, but set up a really good platform, put work on there. But what was great was they said, we don't really expect you to do more than 1 to 2 hours a week on each subject. And that was really helpful, because then that helped the children to sort of, or that helped her to work out, actually, if she does what's on there, she's only really got to do a few hours each morning, and the rest of the day's her own. And that's doable. You know, it was achievable. And I think the important thing for me in all of this is, yeah, it's good for them to do a bit, but it's got to be achievable, and it can't be heavy. You're never going to get the full school day out of them. It's just, it would be too much to expect. But as long as they're sitting and doing some, and actually I think it helps them, because we took the 2 weeks off over Easter, and although they may not have admitted it, I could see that they were ready to come back into that learning again. They needed to have to do a bit of something every day just to keep that process going. And the other school, well, we only heard from them a couple of days ago with what they were putting in place. They're just like way behind everybody else. But so yeah, it does really depend on, partly on how the schools communicate what their expectations are. But to be fair, the schools can't really, and this goes on to what Claire was saying, they can't really expect anything of you very much. They can hope, but they can't really expect anything. So it's just about working with who you are, who your children are, and the schools, I think, are really doing what they can to help and support parents as well. So
yeah, I think that's definitely true. I have been blown away actually by the response of both of my children's schools. They're at different schools, and the way that they've cared for and supported the pupils and parents through this journey. And I think it is about, what can you do? I think it is good to do something, but it is a home environment as well. So it isn't school, it is home. And I think we've got to make our kids feel comfortable. Claire, did you want to come in on that?
Yeah, I was just going to say that we need to remember that we are in lockdown, and the entire country is gripped by something that we have no experience of. And we were talking earlier about mental health in our children and mental health in ourselves. And, you know, the expectation that teachers and schools have of your children is not what we expect from them when they're in the school building. That we have a far greater expectation of them when they're in the school building and they're in our classroom, and we've worked and set work and we're supervising it. The expectation is huge, and the management is huge, and some of them still don't want to engage. So we haven't sent them all home thinking, oh yes, they're all going to do our work. They're suddenly overnight going to become independent self-learners, and they're all going to come back and achieve targets at the end of the year. But, you know, we know that's not going to happen. There's mental health to deal with. There's the fact that people can't go out, they can't have exercise. A lot of them will be eating different food. So many of our children are taking food from the food banks, or they're having vouchers through the school because of free school meals. And they're not eating 3 meals a day like they would in the school building. And there's just so many aspects. And my thought would be that you're not homeschooling, actually. You're looking after your children and you're helping them to make some progress at home while they can't go to school. And what that progress is will depend on your child, who you are, your mental health, the ability of your school to set the right amount of work. And we've got both ends in the classes that I teach. I've got a very, very academic top set year 9 that are swamped with work, and I've had lots of parents that have contacted school and said they can't do all of this. And then I've got another really, really bottom set that I'm struggling to even set a film for, watch this film and take some notes, because they don't engage with anything. So it's hard for everybody. And I think parents need to remember that it is hard for everybody, and schools do know that. And in the summer break, we'll do catch-up classes for those that have got exams next year. In September, those that are behind, well, that's our job. We'll accelerate progress for those students that need it.
That's really helpful. Thanks, Claire. Dean and Emma, did you have anything you wanted to add?
Yeah, we homeschooled a big family for quite a few years, and although the last few years our kids have been in mainstream school, I need to say that this isn't like normal homeschooling. I think a lot of parents have been thrown into this, think, oh, this is homeschooling, and it really isn't, because it's, as Claire said and Wendy, this is not a normal situation. We're not allowed to go out on field trips and do other things. So suddenly their whole little worlds have gone from being very social, you know, where they've got classes, friends, you know, extra curricular stuff, and suddenly it's all at home. So our approach, we had two teenagers that were being homeschooled now anyway, but we've gained 4 in this time that we're sort of taking responsibility for. But they're all different in their approaches. So what we've tried to do is because there are 11 of us all living in the same house, having that bit of structure in the days and sort of keeping the weekends as a bit special has been important for us. So we've kept to a schoolish kind of day, but like Kelly said, they do like to lay in a little bit later, so we're often a bit later starting, which means we often have quite a late lunch, but it's okay. And every day is a bit different, because one kid might be off it one day, and you know, or I might not feel great, but overall we get the work done. What I found is that some of our kids are really keen, some work really well independently. Another one, who shall remain nameless, with needs quite a lot of encouragement to just focus on anything for more than 15 minutes. And so, you know your kids, and some kids, you know, with a little bit of encouragement will actually do quite a lot, and some need a lot of encouragement just to do a little bit.
Yeah.
And so we just we know as parents when to push and when to stop, and there's a time to kind of kick them up the backside, and there's, not literally, there's a time to gently encourage and say, okay, well, if you get this bit done by 11 o'clock, you know, stop and have a nice break. And you know, they're all different, and so each child learns differently, and every teacher knows that as well. So that's the approach we've taken, and actually we're finding, because they haven't got a whole classroom to contend with, they generally get their work done sort of by after lunchtime anyway. And so we said to them, you've still got way more time to play than you would do if you're at school. So that helps for us. Some folks, that's not great, but it works for us to keep some kind of routine anyway. And then it's nice to still have that Friday feeling of like, yeah, it's the weekend. So
yeah,
that's really helpful.
We also shook things up by, because the majority of the homeschooling Emma would carry and has carried in the past, and that can be quite draining and demanding. But we're blessed in that we have a good mix now from 19, 20 down to 2, going on 3, and so we've taken 4 of the older ones that are much further on and will understand the younger ones' schooling, and we've buddied 2 up, 1 up with another, to lift the pressure off so that other things can be done, and that's working really well as well. So buddying older ones with younger ones, and we felt, Emma had said recently that she just felt that it was time that some of our older ones stepped up to the plate in terms of sort of being more assertive in a sort of a leadership capacity, small L, and this is a good option for them to flex their wings and understand how to work on a one-to-one basis, using their sort of interaction, interpersonal skills with the little ones. And it doesn't always work, and there's some objections and some screaming and ranting and stuff, and there has to be interventions. But as on the whole, it's been working really, really well. So buddying up has been something that's been very useful for us.
That's really helpful, and that's something that I've had to learn, because I was helping Alfie last week with his maths homework, which was never my strong point, and he was having to learn how to factorize equations and how to work out the area of a 7-sided shape. And I was thinking, it's been 18 years since I had to learn how to do that. Thankfully, Isabella was like, Mum, it's easy, you just do it like this. So she helped me out a lot with that. It was really good. Wendy, were you going to say something?
Yeah, similar lines really. That one of the things, because we don't have a separate office room or work room, so everybody is working around one table, and including Steve. so I tend to disappear if possible. Leave him and the two youngest ones doing their work in the mornings, and it's actually been really good, because again, when we homeschooled, it was me who was carrying that. They were all a lot younger, and so a lot of that side of things has always fallen to me. But now, because Steve sat at the table with them, he's getting some of that interaction where, you know, if there is only one of them who will be perhaps making a bit of a fuss because they've got far too many maths questions to answer or something. And it's coming to him to just sort of motivate them a bit. And actually, that's quite nice, because my tolerance levels for that are quite low now, because I kind of burnt out doing that years ago. So, and actually, I think it's really good for him to do that. He's got more patience in that than I have now, and I think it's also really good for William, because it's his dad helping him, so he's got that role model happening there as well, and he knows it's not just mum going on again, so there's both of us encouraging him that way. I am still involved, but when they're sat working, I try and disappear.
That's really good. Yeah, that's really good. I think for me as well, it's interesting what you said about Steve working from home. So I'm trying to work at home at the moment as well. So I'm working full time, and it can be quite tricky. So to start with, the first thing we did was put a traffic light system in place, which was red is unless your head is hanging off and it's held only on by one vein, do not speak to me. Amber was, I'd appreciate if you didn't speak to me right now, but if you do need something fairly urgent, then we can have that conversation. And then green is, feel free to kind of chat as we go along. And I found that really helpful, so that they kind of have clear boundaries, particularly when you're constantly on Zoom calls and different conversations, and they're fighting in the corner. I've had to stop a few calls because my kids have been tussling and wrestling on the floor, and just say, stop, we need to just calm down. So that's really helpful. And those ideas that it's not always easy, but we have to create these spaces or these techniques to help support that.
I want to walk around with those on me permanently.
Yeah, parenting traffic lights. I've had a few genius ideas in my time. This might be one of them, so I'll be looking forward to the patent. So we're just close to wrapping up now our discussion, but before we go, there was just one last topic that I thought we could just briefly have a little look at before we close, which was how can we create spiritual habits and spiritual atmospheres at home during this time to help encourage our children and ourselves actually to live in a hope-filled way. So I just wondered if anybody wanted to come in on that. Tom and Naomi?
One thing that I've probably noticed more from being upstairs and hearing downstairs, that when Naomi's played worship music, just had it on constantly, just in the background, not specifically for any reason other than just for it to be there, and it's filling the atmosphere. And it gets the boys more used to that kind of environment as well. It's kind of settles them, it links it to being at church, I suppose, and things like that as well. But I think that just sets the atmosphere for the day. And I think there's been certain occasions where days have been really good, and you look back and that's you've kind of noticed that's just always been there in the background. So I've kind of, and for me, working upstairs as well and hearing that downstairs is actually a really nice thing to have as well. So I think that's kind of similar to don't underestimate prayer, don't underestimate kind of worship music, and just having that in the background, whether you sat down watching a video of worship music or if it's just literally playing in the background.
That's really good. Does anybody else want to come in on that one?
I was just going to agree with you actually, Tom. And one of the things that we need to remember is our children do soak up the atmosphere that they are in, and whatever songs we are playing, they will remember the words to. And we use this to great effect at school, where we have Christian music playing as everyone comes into assembly. So we have assembly on a Monday where everybody is there, and then they have year group assemblies throughout the week, and there is always Christian music playing as they come in and as they go out. And you don't realise, but then you start to hear it being sung around the academy. And we even get things where we go on the 3 peaks and the kids are marching up one of the peaks, you know, singing "Blessed be the name of the Lord," and the staff are like, what's going on? And the kids are like, well, we hear it all the time, we know the words. And the thing is, that's funny and it's amusing and it's great, but actually that is what you are putting into, because worship music are so closely linked to scripture. Even if it's not scriptural phrases, it's scriptural teaching, and you are constantly giving them that reassurance, that power, that those words for them to affect their own being with. So it's a great idea. It's something I still do now, even with the 22-year-old in the house. Alexa, play Hillsong is always on first thing in the morning. Play Hillsong Bethel playlist is my favourite, but it's just playing. It's there all the time. And as people walk in and out of the kitchen, they'll be singing it and not singing it. And yeah, it's their great atmosphere and a good thing to do for the rest of your children's lives.
That's really good. Dean and Emma, were you wanting to come in on that one?
I mean, ditto with the worship, we're the same. The only thing is that, like, we've got older children now that take control of what Alexa's playing. So we'll have like a very eclectic range. And then all of a sudden we'll have Duran Duran playing. So, I mean, that just mucks it all up. But I do think that starting the day, how we start the day can really have an effect on how it continues. And I find that when I've managed to get up early and spend time with God, that certainly, as Rebecca said at the beginning, that can kind of set the tone, because very, very much the parents set the atmosphere of the house, and we can guide it from there. And so it's not always practical for every family, but you know, we try most days to sort of all sit down and have breakfast together. And what is shared during that breakfast time, you know, sometimes there'll be a bit of prayer, a bit of a Bible story or something. It very often just sets the gauge for the rest of the day. I'm not saying that, like, I mean, if things go wrong in the morning, we can always just kind of start afresh and make the rest of the day better. But I think that the best chance we have of having a good day is how we start it.
That's really good. Wendy?
Yeah, similar to Emma, but not over breakfast. We have, right at when this first started, I said to everybody that we needed to, similar to you, Kelly, I said we need to start the learning time at 9 o'clock, which is already later than if you had to get up to go to school. So they would all still be getting a bit of a lie-in. And I said, but at 8:45, we'll be in the living room and we'll just have family sort of God slot time. And the first, I don't know, couple of weeks, I had to make a real effort to make sure that I was in there on time, so that they knew that it would have been very easy to have let it go, you know, go to pot. But I sort of made sure that I was there on time so that they knew they should be. And now that's kind of become established. And even though it's only supposed to be 15 minutes, very often it goes on for half an hour or so. And there's no criteria. We just turn up, we're reading our way through one of the Gospels a little bit every time. We'll pray or we'll worship. Whoever's got, anyone can do anything in that time as long as it's God-wise. And it's really good, because now, even if somebody who will remain nameless is wanting to sleep in very late in the mornings, they'll still know that time they've they've dragged themselves out of bed, or if somebody's just getting out the shower, they'll pull the dressing gown on, and we'll all be there more or less on time. And it happens one way or another, but what's nice is it's not structured, and it's just become very much part of our lives in a way that we would have struggled to do when we were in the school system. And that's been really good. And on the Sundays, we've been doing our own family church. And again, what's been so nice has been that everybody is bringing something to it. So where the children have always been more observing what's going on in church, is very much, other than if they're specific age-related meetings, is very much a sort of observing type of thing. Now, when we do church at home, they're participating, they're bringing the word, they're bringing some scripture and saying what God said to them about it, and or one of them will lead into some worship song. So it's actually for us, although there's a tendency to feel bad about it, but actually this whole thing's been a very positive experience in so many ways, and that's one really good one.
That's really helpful. That's really good. Rebecca, did you want to comment on this?
One thing I'd also add is these things that are being suggested, I completely agree with, and try and implement them in our own home life. But there's always going to be times when the circumstances feel like they're getting on top of you. And the important thing is just to listen to the voice of the Holy Spirit. I want to give an example of my week that's just been. There was one day where I decided to do messy play with the boys, and it was messy play. It didn't stay contained in the little area that I wanted it to be contained in. It was on the whole floor, like our entire downstairs was covered in oats. And I was getting so worked up trying to clean this up, and I was getting more and more annoyed because every time I'd clean up one area, the other half of the house was covered again. And I just knew I was getting in a spiral of getting more and more worked up at the boys, even though they were having a whale of a time. But I felt the Holy Spirit was just telling me to pause and turn my attention towards them, and kind of just stop trying to clean up and just go and sit down and play with them a bit longer. And it was that point when I did that everyone's mood in the house changed, and we had a massive laugh. The laugh that Emma was talking about earlier, like, it really works when you feel yourself getting tense, frustrations are running high. Just laughing and causing the boys to laugh for us just really changes it. And if I hadn't have stopped and listened to the Holy Spirit at that point, it just would not have been a good day for the rest of the day, I can guarantee it. But just moments like that, actually pay attention for when he's calling you to pause, and it can really turn things around.
That is so good, and it made me think a little bit. We all have these best laid plans, and I am a planner, and I've had to deal with my own issues of perfection and expectation over the years, and I definitely am much healthier now than I ever have been, although I'm sure there's more to do. But I heard this great story once. I'm sure it was one of the great evangelists that from the past, like Wesley or someone. It was a story about their mum and how, she had these kids, they were running around. She didn't really know how she was going to get any quiet time in with Jesus, and she didn't really know what to do. And for me, I always used to think that my quiet time had to be in an armchair with a beautiful view and a steaming hot cup of coffee. And an hour's worth of peace. But what she did was she just flipped her apron up over her head, hid under her apron and prayed and spent that time with God. And I think, you know, actually all this stuff you're saying is great. It's just about how can we carve out small moments of peace to really focus on what God is saying to us, which is really good. It was John Wesley's wife, I've just been informed, which is really good. So yeah, so I think, you know, I think this has been a really helpful discussion that we've had. We're going to call it into conclusion now, but I think really what we're saying is that we should mainly focus on what the Holy Spirit is saying to us, do everything we can to keep peace and harmony in our house, laugh, be kind to ourselves, and take opportunities to seek peace and restoration where we can. Just to let you know, we did have a question on the live stream, which I'm not going to answer specifically this evening, but it was from one of our worship leaders, Gabriel. And his question this evening was, what should I do if my sibling likes Taylor Swift? Is an exorcism necessary? Asking for a friend. So as a fellow Taylor Swift fan, I know Naomi likes Taylor Swift as well, I'm going to say no exorcism required. It is okay to have a differing taste in music. And actually variety is the spice of life. So Gabriel, maybe you should give your sister a break. But I just want to take this opportunity to thank our panel. They've been amazing tonight to just share some of their wisdom, some of their successes, some of the things that they've struggled with. So we're just really grateful, and we're hoping that we'll be able to have more of these question and answer sessions as we continue through this time. I want to encourage you to join our Streams of Hope. Maybe this is an opportunity where you can take in your day at 11 o'clock every day, Monday to Saturday. We're going live for 15-20 minutes with a thought that will bring hope and encouragement to you in your day. So why not join that? We have our Sunday services, which our next one's coming up on this Sunday. It starts at 10 o'clock on YouTube with our kids work, followed by worship. And then our message will go out on YouTube and also on Facebook from 11 o'clock. So please join in with that. If you've got any prayer requests, I think we've already put comments in the post here. So if you've got any prayer requests, let us know. We'd love to pray for you. And also Claire Porter is on the call today. She's one of our hosts, and she is going to be hosting a Bible course on John's Gospel. So if you'd like to get involved in that, then please get signed up. We'd love you to get registered. You can find information relating to that on Facebook. Everything's there.
So if I can just interrupt and say, it is going to be amazing, and we need, if you don't sign up, you will miss out. It's going to be amazing.
I love it.
Just because the material is so good.
Yes, and you are as well, Claire. We love you very much. So we just want to take this opportunity to say that we're praying for you, we love you, and we hope that you have a blessed week. If you or any of our panel members have any resources or things they think would be helpful, just pop them in the comments afterwards, and we can share what we know, because I think that's the best way that we can live. But other than that, it's been so good to spend this time with you, and we look forward to doing it with you again soon. Thank you very much, everybody. Goodbye.